Hello, everyone watching. Hello, everyone at home and at school. I'd like to welcome you to the Global Nomads Group and Students Rebuild webcast for February on the topic of race. And this is part of the Facing Difference Challenge this year, encouraging young people around the world to embrace their differences and their similarities with their peers. I'm joining you live from New York City. My name is Afia Williams, and I am very happy to be here with you today. Today we have our students joining from three special places. We have students in Iowa City, Iowa, in Kos, Greece, and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello, everyone. And we also have a special guest, Arno Michaelis, who is joining the students in Milwaukee. So, we are going to learn more about Arno, all about our students later. So we're going to jump right in with introductions. And I'd like to actually have the students in Iowa City start, and then we will go to Greece, and then we will end our introductions in Milwaukee.
Hey, we go to West High School. My name is Guy Snow. We're from Iowa City. I'm here with Val, Lou, Jane, and Maddie. And an interesting fact about Iowa City is here we have the biggest wooden nickel in the world. So that's pretty interesting.
Hey, this is the school from Greece. Here is Valeria, Eva, Stamatis, Nick, George, and Christiana. And a fun fact about us is that we actually don't have a school right now. Thank you.
Hi, we're from Fernwood and we're all in 8th grade. I'm Lily, this is Lola, Alyssa, Arno, Naomi, Ruby, and then Lily. And a fun fact about Milwaukee, it's the largest city in Wisconsin.
Thank you all, welcome, and thank you to all of you watching again. And I invite you to join us in the chat room where we have a moderator and the conversation is continuing. We will be one or two questions from the chat room and asking them live to hear the answers. But we welcome you to engage with each other and with our moderator on the topic as you watch along. Thank you so much. We're gonna just get started with understanding what race is. And so I'd like to ask our young leaders today to tell you how they define race and what does it mean in their lives.
So I'd like to start with what race isn't. I don't believe race is a biological construct. I think it has biological aspects, but it's not necessarily a biological construct because there's not a group of genes that cluster together to make white people or Caucasian people or black people, right? So what is race? I think race, in my opinion, is a social construct that society puts up, and that social construct defines how you will walk the path of life. And with every race, there comes society's stereotypes and baggage, right? And so you'll walk the path of life with different baggage depending on who you are and what you identify as racially. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have some other students who wanted to tell us?
Yes, go. Okay. So the way that you're identified by race can determine like your success in life and how well you do. For example, if two people were to apply for a job, one African-American person and one who identifies as white, the employer is more likely to choose the white person only based on stereotypes made by races and not made by races, just like society in general that identifies people as race and can put people down. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you all. So just to prompt you further, what do you all think this means for people? Like what makes people think the way that they do about race, and why is it so difficult to talk about race?
Okay, so I'll make a small point. What I wanted to say is that why should we determine a person's rights based on that person's skin color? Why should we determine their lives based on just their appearance? I think that should not happen anymore, but it's hard. This can be stopped just overnight, right? It is really hard to talk about race sometimes because some people just won't really understand or won't admit it, right? The point I wanted to make is that we simply need to maybe talk with other people and tell them to open their minds just a little bit, to see that diversity is actually a good thing. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to join in about that?
Anyone?
Okay, and so to our people in the chat room, as we're just starting to understand race, we'd like to know, what is the racial makeup of your school and or your community, and what does that look like? And actually, what of your local community and school? We'd like to hear from. We can start in Iowa City. What's the racial makeup of your school and neighborhood?
So we're very diverse here. We have a lot of different people coming from different places, like exchange students and low-income families. So we see a lot here, as you can see from us over here. Thank you.
Well, for our school personally, like our city is very segregated. So the majority of the people at our school are white, and we do have like a few different races mixed in and stuff. But otherwise, I wouldn't say like our school is very diverse, which is unfortunate. And it's something that I think our city needs to, like, it should be our new goal to kind of like have a stronger community where it's more like mixed in instead of just everybody being separated. I think it's more important to be able to like interact with people who have different backgrounds from you. So thank you.
Okay, so here people in Greece are very close-minded. We have a stereotype that distinguishes people with different color. For example, there's a certain type of jobs that people with a certain color get, because the Greek people do not appreciate those jobs, and that pattern goes on from generation to generation. For example, the Greek parents, will sometimes say that you should not approach people with different color because of their heritage or because of their race, and that goes on to young people. So young people learn from a young age that we shouldn't interact with people with a different color. Thank you.
Thank you. And that actually sets us up nicely, because I know in Greece there's a really high Greek population, but now there are immigrants and people from neighboring countries who are starting to migrate into Greece, which changes how we see ourselves, right? When we see people who look different than us. And so I want to invite you all to share some of your stories about a time when something happened that made you realize your race, whether you had realized it before or never thought about it in that way. Want to hear what happened and how it made you feel.
I'm Val. I was born in Mexico. My family and I came to the United States when I was 3 years old. So basically, I was raised here. I knew about my race, that I was Mexican, like ever since we came here, obviously, because I came from a different country. But I don't have like a specific experience where like I for real realized that I was different than some people in my class. But I was lucky enough to go to schools that were diverse. I first went to Kansas. That's where I was living before Iowa. And my classes were pretty much like diverse. Like there was different kinds of people in there, so it wasn't negative for me. It was like, it was good to like realize that like there was other people that were going through the same thing as me, and also learning English as a second language. And I learned it out pretty quick. It was easy for me, so I didn't struggle as much as some other people would, immigrating from a different country. But also coming to Iowa, I was lucky enough to go to another school that was pretty diverse, and I made friends that are of different races, different backgrounds, different everything. So yeah, I'm really lucky to have lived here. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I was going to talk about a few summers ago. I was giving swim lessons, and I think this is a time where I was really like shown like that people all over the world weren't like they were shown racism, like what people weren't put in their face like they were for me. So I was giving swim lessons to a kid. He must have been about like 6 or 7 or 8, and he was like surprised to see me at first, and he was kind of like astonished. And then while I was giving him the swim lessons, he asked me if my skin was painted, and I just thought that was insane that someone that old hadn't seen like or hadn't interacted with someone of color. And yeah, so that's like a big part where that kind of opened my eyes, and I saw like that there's people in the world that see things differently and that aren't as educated as the people I'm with all the time.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I grew up like from when I was really young to just starting out in elementary school. I grew up in a mostly white neighborhood. So when I went to elementary school, that was basically the first time that I really was introduced to people of other races, and my elementary school was very diverse, so I was lucky to have that, and it was a very positive experience for me. I was very open, and it was very lovely to meet other people that weren't like me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christiana, and my story about when I first understood what race was is when I was in elementary school. Well, from the beginning, my grandparents are born from Albania. They are from Albania. Well, me and my parents were born and raised here in Greece. So when I went to elementary school, one day it just happened that I had the opportunity to mention something from the Albanian language. And when my fellow students found out that I knew one more language that was not Greek, they thought that I was from Albanian, and they said that you cannot hang around with us. Only some of my fellow students would hang around with me because they found it interesting that I knew one more language. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Valeria. So basically, I never really knew what racism was or race. I was born in Romania, right? And after my birth, I moved in Russia to live with my mom since she was Russian. And then I moved back in Romania and I started living with my grandmother. My mom and dad left and came here in Greece to work. So since there's a really small chance you'll see someone in Romania who is not from Romania. So basically growing up, I've never really seen racism around me, nor did the people around me bring the topic up. So I was never really aware such a thing existed. When I moved in Kos, though, in Greece, I started making friends. And my parents are sadly kind of racist. And they would usually tell me to not spend so much time with kids from Albania or from Greece. They're telling me that they have experience, they know what those people are how they are, like what kind of people they are. And then that's when I was actually really bothered, because I was also kind of ridiculed because of my pronunciation, but I was not aware why, nor was I aware why my parents were judging my friends. And when I started talking with other people, because I was curious about that, I learned that such a thing as racism existed, and that's how I actually started searching it up and seeing that it was an actual serious problem of society. I wanted to talk about it with my parents, but they will never admit that they think that way about other races, sadly. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm George, and that is not really my story, but our island story. Before some years, there was an immigrant outbreak. Would you call it outbreak? I don't know. And actually, a lot of immigrants came here to Kos, our island. And what I want to talk about is that the locals, the Greeks here, were so afraid of the immigrants without even knowing them and knowing their story. And for example, many celebrities from all around the globe came to our island, to our island to aid the immigrants. But we as locals did basically nothing except only some of us. And what I wanna say basically is that fearing something different, something you don't know, is not good. Thank you.
Okay, so growing up, race, and specifically my race, was never a topic of discussion. I guess it's because I have half Black siblings and cousins who are Hispanic, so that never really defined us as we were growing up. We were just relatives. And so the first time that I think that I really understood what my race was, or came to terms, well, not to terms, but I was just identified as my race, was during summer school when I was younger. My sisters and I were the only white students who were attending, and everyone else was either of Hispanic or African American descent and spoke at least some Spanish. My sisters and I, we didn't speak any Spanish, and so that just separated us from everyone else and made us different. And they only knew us then as the white girls. So from that experience, I learned that races exist, and that is something that we all have to deal with, but that isn't the only thing that should define us. And who we are as people. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa. So this was a time when I was shopping with my dad, and he was helping this non-English person, and he was speaking in Spanish, and he was helping him out. And this guy comes up to him. He's like, "What are you doing here? Why are you speaking this way? You're not supposed to be here." And I was so shocked by that. And so when I went home, I asked my dad, "Hey, why was he saying that? I thought everything was good, and I thought everybody was nice." And that's when I realized that there was racism, and he told me that, and it was just really surprising that people acted like that. Thank you.
I'm Lily, and I live in a white neighborhood, so I'm not the minority at all, but I've been places where I have been treated like the minority. And one instance, for example, these kids came up to me and they were mocking me because I was white and things like that. After that experience, it wasn't pleasant. And I didn't like that. And so when I got home, it was a good learning experience to know. I was well, I want to make sure that I never treat somebody like that and don't, stereotype people because of their race, because everybody is different, and that's something that could really help empower people and not put them down. So that was a good learning experience for me. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Lola, and like Lily, I grew up in a mainly white neighborhood. So I never really had an experience or a moment where I realized my race and that I was white. But I do vaguely remember, in around third or fourth or fifth grade, kind of just looking around my classroom and realizing that there were mainly white kids in there, and it wasn't really a diverse student body. And looking back on that, it kind of upsets me because I think having a diverse student body is really important because it can help us to learn about each other and each other's cultures, which can then help to eradicate things like intolerance and ignorance, which I think stems from lack of knowledge. So if we were to all be together in the same school, learning about each other, and just being nice to each other, then that could get rid of things like racism and intolerance. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your stories. I have some questions from the chat room, but before we get to those, I want to actually come back to Arno, our special guest. He is the co-founder of Serve to Unite, a nonprofit that works with young people on creating peace across lines of difference. And so I just want to hear about your story a little and how it led you to your work today.
Thanks, Pia. When I was 16 years old, I really made the decision to take my identity as a white kid and run with it. And I got really involved in this idea of race and identifying myself as white and separating myself from people who weren't white. It's interesting that today I understand that that was a privilege that I had that people of color typically don't have. The idea that I can be like, hey, I'm white and I decided to take this and run with this. People of color typically do not have that luxury of deciding whether or not they want to be seen as black or brown or yellow. And as a white kid, being unaware of that, it made it easier for me to fall into the ideology of racism and white supremacy and believe this idea that our skin color makes us more different than alike, which I think is really the simplest definition of race. So I spent 7 years in hate groups from 1987 to 1994. And during that 7 years, living like that and seeing myself as separate from all the other human beings is actually an exhausting way to live your life. And it just built up more and more to the point where I was looking for an excuse to leave in 1994. And that happened when I became a single parent and a second friend of mine was murdered in a street fight. But what made me most exhausted was when people who I claimed to hate, people of color, Jewish people, gay and lesbian people, treated me with kindness when I least deserved it. That drove home to me that this ideology of separatism and hate that I was trying to believe was completely wrong. So that helped me get over my fixation with the construct of race. And today, I'm very honored to work with these brilliant young people and with you all, and thank you, Greece and Iowa, to really establish the truth of our common humanity, and that the fact that we have more in common than different is a really great way to understand and acknowledge and celebrate our differences, see those differences as assets rather than liabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've been in Milwaukee for a bit, but I would love to hear from the students. What was it, just one or two, what was your reaction when you first heard Arno's story?
Hi, I'm Lily. When I first heard Arno's story, I was kind of surprised that there was so much hate in the world and so many people are involved in this kind of thing. But it's also amazing how other people who he decided to hate, that those people were still kind to him and showed him what real kindness was. And then he got out and he started helping these other people who he used to dislike very strongly, and how he is now part of something so great. Thank you.
So when I first heard Arno's story, it wasn't the first time I heard it. My sister was also in Serve to Unite, so I was a little bit familiar to it when I heard it. But his story just in general is inspiring that you could be in a place where you hate people so much, but can overcome that hatred towards other people and learn to love them and to be kind. And then not only that, but then to inspire other people to get along in this bandwagon of treating people and living in a society in which we are completely accepting. So I'm just grateful that I was able to hear his story and meet him. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Exactly how I felt. This is not the first time I've heard the story, and I'm always near about to shed a tear, just on the power of change. And so just piggybacking off of that idea of change and a person's one identity and then another, but also that you have to see another person first, right? To see that they're different. And there is this concept of color blindness. And so someone in the chat room just asked about the students' opinions on the concept of being colorblind, or like that someone might not see race. And I want to jump actually to the students in Iowa City to start, and then if anyone else has something to add, I'd love to hear it.
I've actually heard that term a lot, where people try to like seem like they're progressive and stuff, and they'll be like, I'm colorblind, I don't see color. And I think that's a very problematic statement. Like, I want you to see my color, and I want you to understand the struggles that come with my color, and I want you to treat me as you would treat any other person with a different color. You know, I want you to see my color and recognize the struggles that I have and the differences that I carry, and treat me indifferently to everybody else that you see. Thank you.
Myra DeVries, please call 1090. Myra DeVries, please call 1090.
Sorry.
Also, like, also like, I see that, I understand what she's saying, and like, I think it's really important to like be aware of the backgrounds of other people, to like see where they're coming from, and see in all interactions like all throughout the day and all throughout your life, because it's really important to connect with people, especially of different races and colors. So I also think that like the term colorblindness is problematic, because you can't you have to be able to open your mind to everything.
Great,
thank you.
Greece or Milwaukee? Yeah, sure. Let's hear you, Greece.
Yes, you don't need to be colorblind in order to treat people right. You have to treat everyone the way they should be treated, which is like a human being, not black, blue, or green, like a human being, because that's what we are. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great segue, actually. Another question from the chat room for the schools who have diverse student bodies, even if there's a large majority and then some other minorities. The question is what are your schools doing to be inclusive to the students who are not a part of the majority?
So this year, West High decided to, instead of not have school for MLK Day, we dedicated the whole school day to having like different, like, was it like workshops and classes where different people could teach courses and like explain their stories and have activities for everyone to get involved. I was part of the Latinx panel. Ms. Martin organized it. It was really fun. It was like the first time I got to like share like my Latinx experience, I guess, which I haven't been able to, especially in school. So it was me and then like some other Latinx students, and they were all from different grades. And then students could sign up to come see the panel. And yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that my school decided to do that for us. I really enjoyed it.
We also are pushing for ethnic studies courses where we educate students about people of different backgrounds, so you don't only learn about history from like the white man's point of view, and you learn about things from different, from all parts of the world, all people's cultures.
Yeah, and then we also did instructional rounds where basically we set up different groups to go into classrooms and observe kind of like the diversity in them and how we can improve that and be more accepting in our coursework and in the classrooms in West High. Thank you.
Any other school? What's happening at Fernwood? I know you said it's majority white, but I imagine that there are a few students of color maybe, but are there efforts, regardless of there being a majority, to understand other backgrounds?
Well, like at our school, we do have like people from different races, but like the majority are white. But at our school, like we don't really have like the high school from Iowa, but you know, if anybody is like being made fun of for their race or like being discriminated against here, like that is not tolerated whatsoever. So that's kind of like what our school effort is. But otherwise, like we have students from like all over the school. Like, we paint murals. like throughout the school or like just like projects, but it's kind of embracing races, even though we are in a diverse school, but we still do support stuff. And then Alyssa,
with Certainty Night, we do that a lot. We have different schools we join with, like Bayview High School, or we joined with Lloyd Barbie last time, and we basically accept anybody because I mean we really don't need to just be so excluded, like excluding everybody, because everybody's a person. You don't really need to exclude them because of their color or religion or sexuality or anything else. So we accept anybody, and we're just a great community. So,
and like what Alyssa said is us collaborating with other schools. This gives us opportunities to be like be part of a diverse group, because other schools are more diverse than us, or you know, there is a school where the majority of people there are a different race than us. So when we collaborate, it is kind of mixing them together, and it's like, you know, and that comes to show that like race, you know, it should just be, it's not something people should be judged by, because you know we'll be working with other people from other races, and like everybody has the common goal to just make our community stronger. So it's important because, you know, everybody, we may be different, but we all are working towards the goal to just be able to help everybody else. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great, and leading us right along to understand and hear more about like taking action. And so another question from the chat room actually is, we do a lot of awareness building in our school and we teach courses, but how can we move students from awareness to action, which I know Global Nomads Group and Students Rebuild are big supporters of students taking action after they've built some levels of awareness and empathy, right? So I would like to hear and share with the world some of your stories about the work that you are doing to face difference. I know in Iowa City at West High that you all have actively taken action, at least within your school. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so there have been a lot of like incidents of discrimination and racism that have been going on around school, and so we formed an organization, like a nonprofit type of thing, known as Students Against Hate and Discrimination, and we go out and we like actively like protest whenever things happen that we don't agree with, and we have walkouts and sit-ins. But we also do a lot of behind the scenes work. So we attend school board meetings and city council meetings, and we go to senator town hall meetings and all of that stuff, and we actively try to push for change within our community, right? We're actively pushing against hate and against discrimination and against the injustices that happen. Even like, we are a diverse community, but there's still a lot of issues that do need to be addressed within our community, and we push for those issues to be addressed and to give open spaces for people to discuss those kinds of topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know that we have some different age groups watching. And so one question from the chat room is, at what age do you think someone should learn about race? Tough one.
I think to be educated on race should happen when you're young, just so that's instilled in you throughout your life. And even if you're not educated on race, that I feel like that's something that needs to happen, just so like as a society and as a community we can build, just to like be more united. So like, again, I think it should start when you're young, but if it hasn't, like if you haven't been educated, then you need to, like, that needs to be a priority. And I think the younger you are when you learn about race, the more time like you're given to understand it. So that's important to like learn it when you're younger. That way you have, you know, your whole life to learn about and understand and like embrace races.
Yeah, I agree with them. I think you should be exposed to all, like, everyone at a young age and all the different colors, because I think it's important to be educated on each other, so that we can recognize that even though we have differences, we're all the same, and we should just accept each other. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Grease, a few comments. And I want to just, before you speak, throw in that I know you all also spoke about just some of you coming into the understanding or concept of race and racism. And I know when we talked before, we talked about like social media. I know you all have also been seeing things in the news about what's happening with young people, right, in America. So I wanted to also invite you to have that dialogue as well, but please with your other statements.
Hello. And my opinion is that people should learn about race as young as possible, because the sooner the better. For example, from my personal experience and from people I know, our personality and our character is more sensitive when we are young. So when we go to school and we see people discriminating us and saying that you're different, it just breaks our hearts, and probably that could lead to a problem in the future. For example, you are afraid of others, or you start to be racist towards others. And yeah, that's my opinion.
Hi. I think that young people should only know how to embrace differences and don't care about race or things like that, because those are adult things that adults sometimes do with other purposes or motivations. What we should do as kids is only to embrace differences and accept people for who they are. Thank you.
I also wanted to say something. Okay, so I've heard everyone say that we must learn about race from a really young age. What I think, I don't know, I might have this opinion because it applied to me, I don't know. I don't agree, because when people are really young, like young kids, they don't really know what race is. Like I didn't know, most of us didn't know. When we were 4, no one made differences towards other people. Like we were all the same. We would play with everyone, boys, girls, everything was the same, right? So I think that we should learn about race when we actually start to see that some things are not the same anymore, that we start spotting like, oh, there's a difference over there. That's when we should start learning that, oh, that difference is not bad. That's actually wonderful, and we should embrace that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're all very correct and very insightful, that there are levels to it, and that young people don't start out seeing race, and that it is when something occurs that we have to educate other people. And we talk about now that social media, the news, the internet, that is how a lot of young people get their information, right? And so I wanted to, like our time is slowly coming or quickly coming to a close. So I wanted to also ask our special guest Arno another question, and then invite you all to ask Arno any questions about the story that he told you of himself. And so my question for you, Arno, is if there was one word to describe, or multiple words to describe how it felt to make that shift in your life, like what it meant for you. You spoke about being a single parent and having a new perspective, but this was life-changing. Like this is changed like how you saw the entire world. What was that like?
The single word would be gratitude. Every single day of my life now, I'm grateful that I'm no longer that person. And I'm grateful for the very brave people who treated me with kindness to lead me through this transformation. And with gratitude being such a big part of my life, I really want to make that central to the message that I think when we're grateful for life in general, it helps us appreciate our differences rather than fear them. So just the act of practicing gratitude every day, finding one little thing where you're like, this is awesome. Like, I'm happy just to be breathing today. When we do stuff like that, it opens us up to see our differences as assets, as things that make us stronger as a community, that make us more able to solve problems. When we have different perspectives on an issue, we have a better capability to solve problems. So gratitude is super important to me, and I'm so grateful for all of you guys. You really are making this day amazing, and making our future amazing also.
Thank you. I agree. So for the students who don't work with Arno on a regular basis in Iowa City and in Greece, is there anything you would like to ask him hearing this story? I don't know if you've ever met someone who was able to admit that they were at one point had a biased opinion and then evolved into a new space. But I just want to invite you. We'll start in Greece. I see you.
I don't have a question, but I want to say that what you did is inspiring, that you turn your life around like that and you understood your mistakes. And not only did you understand what you did was wrong, but you did the right thing after doing what was wrong. And yeah, that's highly appreciated. Thank you.
Some people say that you learn from your mistakes, so that's inspiring, yes.
I actually have a question. So I really like the fact that you admitted that you were wrong and tried to, do something to change your life for a better, right? Why do some people not realize that they're wrong? Like, even if we point it out, they still won't realize that what they do is wrong. Like, how did you realize it? And why do some other people not? That's all. Thanks.
That's an awesome question, and thank you guys for your kind comments. I think that what helps people realize they're wrong are when we can bring things out to the table that all human beings can relate to. So that's why kindness is so powerful, because no matter who you are, what your background is, what you think, kindness can open your heart and open your eyes to what's going on. Forgiveness has that power also. So does gratitude. So when we cultivate those things in our society, people who are looking at race and believing that our differences override our similarities can understand that that's not true. And that can open their eyes to not only admit what they were doing was wrong, but to become activists to cultivate those things in society that do bring us together. And I'm very happy to say, like, I've helped other people do that. A couple of years ago, I helped a guy leave the Ku Klux Klan, which is a really old, horrible racist group in the United States. And now he's helping other people realize that racism makes your life miserable and that there's a better way to live. And that's because of kindness. So kindness is actually a weapon against racism that I think is super powerful, and we should never lose sight of that.
Thank you. And I would even add that honoring or celebrating another person for who they are does not take away from who you are as well. And so to get along with a person of another race or to engage either in work or in play with others does not have to diminish you. And in diminishing others, it also does not make us look better in ourselves or help others see us in the light that we want to carry, right? Thank you so much for that. That was a great question, Valerie. And I hate to close this out, but I'm going to start wrapping us up. And so I want to invite each school to share some final thoughts. We will end in Milwaukee. And Arnold, if you have any last bit of advice, we'll end with you before I close out. So why don't we go back to Iowa, final words.
So we'd like to say that we're grateful that we were given this experience to interact with people from other parts of the world and other parts of the country and to hear their points of view. I think it was an enriching experience, and we hope to have more conversations and more platforms to have conversations like these. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to say that I'm not always given the opportunity to talk about the stuff I like politics, racism. I'm really interested in all these kind of things. And the people around me, mostly my parents, don't really want to open up about that stuff. And I'm really grateful for my teacher, for you, for everyone to give me this opportunity and learn more. That was wonderful. Thank you.
And I want to say one quick thing. It's really nice to see the world from your eyes, but when you see it from somebody else's eyes, it's much better. You can understand a lot more, and you can make sure you will never make those mistakes that you will never want to happen to you. Thank you.
So we also appreciate everything and talking to people.
Okay, sorry.
And talking to people who are different from us. We also hope that one day we can find like a future where we're not divided by our race, and that the media won't focus on our races, but it will focus on the real things that are happening in our community. And we hope that one day we're not divided, but united.
Thank you.
I would add for my closing thought that remember that the ingredients of happiness are gratitude, kindness, and forgiveness. And the more often we practice those things, the happier we're going to be personally, and the happier the people around us are going to be. And that sets the stage for us to start deconstructing racism and tearing down these structures in our society that keep this idea that we're more different than alike defining how we see each other. So those ingredients of happiness are really our salvation. They help us heal, and they can help us heal our society as well.
Thank you, Arno. Thank you, students in Iowa. Thank you, students in Milwaukee. Thank you, students in Greece, for your time, to your educators, to your schools, for jumping on board and being excited and believing in the conversations that young people have with each other, that they are important to share with the world. I personally agree, and I am also very grateful for all of you. I want to thank our audience, people who've been watching and having a riveting conversation in the chat room. I hope that you all got some of your questions answered and were inspired to take whatever change you see necessary in your immediate schools and communities. I want to invite you to take the Facing Difference Challenge at studentsrebuild.org and have your students draw self-portraits and reflect on who they are, raise money for a good cause, and to join us for our final webcast of the year on April 27th, where we are talking about immigration. From New York City, from Global Nomads Group, and from Students Rebuild, we thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening. Peace.